There's such a variety of things that you can actually sell on Etsy that it can honestly feel quite overwhelming. But I like to base all of my decisions off of data, so in this video, I'll go over the top 5 Etsy print-on-demand things that you can actually sell on there. Let's get into it. I think it was this year, but they basically released a feature called Printify Insights. And from that, you can basically just see what sells best on Printify overall. And it makes it super easy to actually know what product category you can sell well in. So to start off, let's see here. The fifth one that actually sells very well on Etsy and very well overall with print on demand is posters, matte vertical posters here. We'll just search for posters. Now, with the recent Etsy changes, like with the recent Etsy update, they've actually taken a stance when it comes to AI. I've been really hesitant to use AI myself because they haven't actually made a stance and I haven't really known if is AI a transformative work, is it a derivative work? It's an evolving thing, but for the time being, I think like we can always adjust things later on. But for the time being, we can basically use AI as long as we use our own prompts. So what we do here is search for posters first to see how it actually fares well on Etsy and to get a kind of a glimpse on how passive this will be and how much work it will actually take from us to actually do this. So first off, I have to filter stuff since I live in Sweden, so I filter it to the United States. I then filter it by physical items and then the star seller filter. Why I use the star seller filter is because I can then swap out star for best here. And there we go. So we can't use this type of design. This would make this whole thing much easier, but there are gray areas within their new updates. So it's not sure that you can actually use this anymore. So I would stay clear of this. When it comes to this, since AI is now allowed, it makes it a lot easier to create elements overall. So how I would use AI, something like ideogram for instance, is that I would basically use it for the elements itself. This one seems like a great thing to actually use since we can basically just write a prompt in ideogram to ask for basically an outline of a family with a dog or like with any type of family. Then you can just insert their own name. That can make this one quite passive. However, I do want to preface that if you get a lot of orders, you will need to the element here is custom as well. And that will not make it that passive. And that will just take a lot of work since you have to go into ideogram, ask for a specific line drawing every time, and then customize this part. And the most important thing to know is that let's say that you have 100 orders a day, like during Q4, I've previously myself received around 150 to 300 orders a day. And that's a lot of work. And if things aren't systematized or templatized and it doesn't take less than a minute to actually make a design, let's say that it takes 3 or 4 minutes, or for ease of use, let's say that it takes 5 minutes to actually make one of these listings. And so 5 minutes to make in full with waiting for ideogram to give you everything and to give you the elements basically, and then for you to customize the name itself and then put it into Printify, put the order in, and everything like that. So 5 minutes per design. If you take that times at most 300, that's basically 1500 minutes. And if we divide it by 60, we get the hours. That's basically the whole day, I think. If I'm counting this correctly, so I could be wrong because it's 5 minutes times basically 300 orders. So it's 1500 minutes. If we take basically 60 times 25, it's 50. Yeah, okay, so it's basically 25 hours. That's crazy. What I want to say is that this could be a great thing if it's really systematized and templatized and it's really easy to make one of the designs. Making a version of this where you only use one type of line drawing and only customize the text makes it a lot easier. So depending on how you do it, depending on how custom you want to make it, I basically say that you can make a lot of money with this if you hire virtual assistants. That could be something. I haven't done that myself. I've only hired people that I personally know. Well, at least I've hired one, but it still takes a lot of work with teaching people how to do your stuff. Even if they're pros at it, they still have to learn your type of process. So basically, it will still take time even if you have VAs. So I would basically rate this a 3 out of 5 in passiveness. And I would when it comes to how much money you can make with it, I would definitely rate this a 5 out of 5. And then I would basically rank the skills that you need for this a 4 out of 5. So 5 being that you need no skills and 1 being that you need a lot of skills. So you need some skills, but not that much. So this is a great shop idea to get into, especially now since AI has been approved and you can use things like ideogram or Midjourney for the elements itself. Now, the fourth best-selling print-on-demand item on Printify overall is actually phone cases. So phone cases is something that is selling super well. So let's search for some phone cases shipped to the US. My target market is always going to be the US as it's the easiest market to sell in if you live abroad like me, like I live in Sweden. So, okay, here we have these. Now, The main thing with phone cases overall that sells really well is like patterns. But the key thing to know is that you don't actually have to make a pattern. You can make something like this, for instance. You can make something simple with just a design and just keep it simple. You can also do something with their own custom name like this here. And if you keep it simple, then I really feel that you can make this work quite easily. So I sell a lot of phone cases, especially on merch by Amazon, and you don't have to make these patterns. Patterns can be a pain to do because it requires more design work. Like, I'm not a designer myself. I don't know how to draw or anything like that, but it makes it basically harder to do in my opinion. So I like to do a lot of simple designs, something more like in these veins, where just simple text designs or just very few elements in it. This could be a great way to actually niche your shop in, or basically just put stuff up within the product category in. So this could be a great product category to delve in if you keep it simple. I would not advise to do anything too fancy, as that gets everything more complicated. And if you make them personalized with their personalized names, just keep it like their initials, just a custom name, just keep it super simple. So I would basically rate this in how much money you can make, a 5 out of 5 definitely, especially with it being like one of the absolute best sellers on Printify overall. And these are current stats, not like old stats. I would then rate how passive this is. I could also rate this a 4, 1 being really not passive, 5 out of 5 being very passive. I would rate this maybe like a 4 out of 5. If you make it simple, if you make it hard with like customized patterns and stuff, then it will definitely be like a 2 out of 5 and really not passive. It will take a lot of time. So it depends on how much you can systemize things. And when it comes to how much skills you actually need with this type of product category, I'd say if you keep it simple, then it's a 4 out of 5, so not that hard. But if you do these patterns that are definitely selling well, then like I couldn't make these, for instance. I don't know how to make these pattern stuff, but if you make something like this with just a simple design on it, then it could work very well. So it's all on how you make it. So skills, I'd say 3 out of 5, since you actually need a design that sells very well. But if you keep it really simple, it can even be a 4 out of 5, depending on how hard you want to make it. So the third best selling item on Printify overall is actually hoodies. So hoodies is selling very well, even though it's the summer months. So let's just search for hoodies for women, since Etsy is mainly targeted at women. Filter this to the United States, star seller, physical items. So I've sold a lot of sweatshirts and stuff like that myself, and that's similar to hoodies. So I do have a lot of experiences within the clothing niche itself, and it's the same thing, honestly. It can be really passive. Like, let's say that you do something like this, like future Mrs. Hudson. Then it can be really easy, because then you just change the last name here. But let's say that you make it like a retro design, and you have like a wavy retro design style. Or so let's say that you want to make something like this, for instance. Then you need a photo from every customer. You need to download that. You run the risk of basically downloading viruses too. But apart from that, you need a customer to send you a message every time, and then you can basically put that on top of the sweatshirts. Most people, in my experience, don't really know about resolutions and stuff, and people send you like low quality images, and then you have to communicate out to them that you need a more high resolution image. So this could be a real pain. And basically in passiveness, if you do it like this, I'd say that it's more like a 2 out of 5, since you have to get the image, put that on a sweatshirt, and if something is wrong with the image itself, you need to contact the customer. Just a big hassle. But if you do something simple like this one, and then just swap out the last name here, then it can be really passive, as all you need to do is just swap out a single word. And since you control all the fonts and everything, you know that basically the design itself will meet the required like 300 dpi resolution that you need. So on how much money you can make, and that's definitely a 5 out of 5. I've sold a lot of hoodies in my experience, and when it comes to passiveness, it can be a 4 out of 5. It still takes a lot of work, especially during Q4, but it depends on how much you can template stuff and make a system out of it. If you take something like this and you make a whole logo here, it takes a lot longer. Just keeping it simple, or doing it something like this with like Mrs. Smith and then established 2022, then you just change the year. If you do something like this, then it's really easy, doesn't take that much time, and you can keep like personal, how to like put in orders under a minute if everything is just templatized and easy to make. So in passiveness, I think it can be a 4 out of 5, but if you make it complicated, it can be a 2 out of 5, depending on how complicated you make. Like if you have a retro wavy design every time, it can take a long time, just because you have to fiddle around with all the settings with the design itself. And when it comes to skills, I'd say it's a 3 out of 5, just like the rest of them. I think I said that, but you basically need a design that actually sells, and that takes time and a lot of testing. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can just be something like this, like Maid of Honor, obviously, with just text. That makes it easy. But if you make something like this, it takes a lot more work. So it all depends on how complicated you want to make it. But in my opinion and in my experience, the simpler it is, the better it is. And the second top selling product category on Printify overall, it's actually sweatshirts. The Gildan 18,000. Sold a ton of these, and it's the same thing as the hoodies basically. And it's a great product category to get into, especially now with fall coming up and with Q4 coming up. Q4 is always huge, and sweatshirts and hoodies sells really well during that time. And same thing with the hoodies. If you basically complicate stuff too much, like if you make something like this, like Mrs. Morgan, this type of design here, you need to basically make it distressed. You need to make it wavy, kind of like this, every single time with every single custom name. I would not do this since it takes too much time. You can definitely sell much, but as I mentioned, if you have like 300 designs and it takes 5 minutes to make a single design, then you're basically sitting the whole day. You can hire like VAs and stuff, but it takes a lot of work to find that. It takes a lot of work to teach them. So I would be hesitant to overcomplicate stuff. I would just keep it simple and basically just do simple personalized stuff if you want to do personalized stuff. This one is basically the same as the hoodies. I class this as a 3 out of 5 in skills, definitely a 5 out of 5 on how much money you can make, and a 4 out of 5 in passiveness if you make it simple and easy, and a 2 out of 5 if you make it hard and do something more like this type of stuff. Because if you make it like this, then you have to do the wavy font every time, and you have to put the distressed element on top of the design to make it. So it's just harder to do and just takes longer to make. And now we go into the top selling product on Printify overall, and that's actually t-shirts. Top 3 selling product categories in the slow summer is t-shirts, all of these 3. These are specific variants of them. So yeah, the Gildan 5000, the Vela Canvas 3001, and then the Comfort Color 1717, but all of these are t-shirts. So I've also sold a lot of t-shirts. It works. It's a great category to be in. And even though a lot of people like say that it's like super saturated, if something is saturated, that just means that you have a lot of competition. If you add value to the product category and to the niches that you're in, and you follow the steps correctly by adding value to it, and you have a great offer, then it's not a bad thing that it's actually saturated. It just proves that people want this specific product. So when I started Etsy, everyone told me the same thing, that Etsy is super saturated, but that really doesn't stop you from selling. In my opinion, I just feel saturation doesn't really have any correlation with how many sales you can actually make. If anything, it proves that you can basically really sell well within the niche, not the reverse. So it's the same thing as the hoodies, as the same type of designs. Like if you make something like this, for instance, then it can be really hard since you basically have to make this whole type of design every single time. But if you make something like this instead with the hearts, or if you make something like, yeah, this one too. This is popular design style, but if you make something like this, you have to change the photos of the animals every time. You have to change the name every time. It will definitely take longer, so maybe around 5 minutes at minimum maybe, to actually make that type of design. And that will take up a lot of your time if you sell a whole lot of them, which we actually want to do. And just tangent, never do this. Since it's a trademarked IP, never do this. Same with this, since it's Frank Ocean stuff. But yeah, if you make something simple like this basically here, then you just swap out a name and it makes it super easy. So same with the sweatshirts, same with the hoodies. If you basically keep it simple and do a lot of simple designs, simple sells really well, then you can make this as passive as possible. It will still take some of your time, but I'd rank it a 4 out of 5 in how passive it can be. So 5 out of 5 being like fully passive and 1 out of 5 being really not passive. But the same thing, if you make the design hard, then it can be a 2 out of 5 and 4 out of 5 if you make it simple. How much money you can make, I can definitely attest to say that it's a 5 out of 5. Within the clothing niche, I've made a bunch of money myself. And when it comes to skills, I would say it doesn't take, like, you don't need to draw and stuff like that. All you need to do is combine best-selling elements to create something new. I'll link my design video for that here, but basically you have to learn how to combine elements and then add these a specific type, like the retro font and the cursive font sells very well separately. Then you can combine those two elements to create a listing that's new. If you can't find a listing that has those elements together within a niche, you can just add that into the niche and add value to the niche. And that's how you can stand out and actually make sales. That kind of skill like takes some time, but it's not really super hard. So I'd say basically skills is maybe a 3 out of 5 like the rest. So yeah, if you want to learn more about print on demand, I suggest watching this video right here. And if there's any videos that you want to see next, just drop a comment down below and I'll do my best to help out. I'll see you in the next one.